Well, hello, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank J. Kim Wright and the Quinnipiac University for organizing and for inviting me to be part of this course. By the way, I consider J. Kim Wright, in addition to be a friend of mine, one of the brightest brains that circulate around the world, and especially in the legal world. Thank you. So first of all, I need to introduce myself. Who am I, by the way? Who is this woman who lives in the south of Brazil? Well, I am a mother. I am a daughter and a sister. My sister, by the way, is a lawyer like me. I am a writer. Sometimes I write things. I speak. I love to speak, by the way. I have some good friends around the world. I love my friends. I have cousins in the other side of the world, in Europe. I love my cousins. I love being among people, collaborative people. I love soccer. I am fan of soccer. I love to travel. And sometimes I am a rebel. I'm a bit rebel. But I am a lawyer as well. As a professional, my first and not unique because I am a mediator. I was graduated by the Catholic University of my state in Brazil, which is Rio Grande do Sul, the deep south of Brazil. I have my website, which is the Etchalus Systemic Legal View. I have a master in international trade law. I have a specialization in legal psychologist. I have some certification as mediator. I am a student as well because I restart to study a specialization in neuroscience, positive psychology, and mindfulness in a Catholic university of another state nearby my state. So I have an advanced certification in conscious contract. I've been trained in collaborative contracts by the University of Tennessee, and I belong to different organizations. I am, for example, the co-founder of a Latin American organization of collaborative law. And I am a member and part of the board of the Global Collaborative Law Council. So I've been practicing laws. So this is going to reveal my age, people. I have almost 40 years of experience in the legal world. I have gone through several stages in my professional life. For more than 30 years, I worked with traditional litigation, and I was good in litigation, by the way. And I went through arbitration, but concentrated more efforts in mediation, which I consider a big portal because mediation it's transformative. And then I reached collaborative law and managed to do what today I consider my main work product. It is this relational approach practice in law, where I serve clients and to be able to help them achieve their interests, especially helping them to build their legal relationships. Okay. But I would like to know about you. I would like you, if you would like to do that, to introduce yourselves, please. Who starts? Yale?
I'm happy to. I'm also, I introduced myself before you started, so I won't repeat that, but I will add, following your suit, I would add that I'm also a mother, a daughter, a sister, an aunt. You might hear my nieces in the background playing around. As I said, I live in Israel, where I am at right now, but I also teach around the world, and I have very good friends around the world as well. So many similarities, but obviously also differences.
Thank you. Who else? Okay. If you don't want to introduce yourselves, no problem. So, what do I intend to share with you during those minutes? Some reflections on the current context, some insights into the relational theory of contracts, a glance at some economic concepts. What is the psychological contract and its importance in the context of relational contracts? And the last part, the application of conscious contracts methodology in the construction of the formal psychological contract inserted in a relational contract, including some examples, and the conclusion. But before I begin, I would like to ask you to follow me in 3 deep breaths. I will count to 3, and then we can start. Is it okay? So 1, 2, 3. Thank you. So we are going to start talking about the industrial revolutions in sequencing. You can see that we have had so far in the course of the history 5 moments that mark so-called industrial revolutions. The first one with the introduction of mechanical production equipment driven by water and steam energy. The year that marked is 1784. The second one with the introduction of the electricity and oil as a source of energy for mass production around 1870. The third with the automation of production based on the use of electronic systems, information technologies. The fourth, with automated and interconnected production based on the use of cybernetical physical systems, Internet of Things, collaborative networks, and now we are getting close because it was 2010. And finally, we are experiencing the fifth with the automation of cognitive process, content creation, deep learning, adaptation to the environment, personalization. Let's take a look what the interesting situation that we have here. Between the second and the first one, we had more than a century, 130 years. And between the third and the second, we had a bit less than a century, 99 years. And then we had this, observe that between the fourth and the third, we had 41 years. And now in the 2023, between our year and the last revolution, we have only 13 years. So the timeline between one revolution and another reveals in conclusion that we are experiencing a historical moment of ongoing revolution. Oh my God, this is so amazing. And this digital revolution leads us to the so-called exponential age, that is, the digitization of the world, the generation of information and the creation of non-things on a scale never seen before. New values and new social concepts grow in profusion, as well as disappear in the same fraction of time in which they were conceived. And oh my God, how can we deal? It is impossible for human brain to reach the volume of information that is produced daily and that today are the commodities of the digital revolution. That is why we are making great investments in artificial intelligence. that today reached very sophisticated models, call it multi-modal models. That is, those robots who know how to speak, observe, communicate in synchrony with humans, and who more recently are being equipped with resonance elements to be able to act with empathy. So we are creating this artificial intelligence with a high sophisticated level. But not everything is rosy in this environment, as we have some serious problems to be faced. For example, jobs. According to the Social Economic Forum, by the year 2025, I mean tomorrow, automation and a new division of labor between humans and machines or technology will be in 50% parity, which will impact in approximately 85 million jobs worldwide or more. We don't even know. And according to, this is the source that you can reach if you want. And there's another thing that we have to face. In 2050, according to United Nations, we are going to be 10 billion people around the world. So, oh my God. With 10 billion people in the world, it's more than evident that we won't have everyone's needs met, and therefore the potential of conflicts is greater. What are we going to do? Sit and have this. We have to face that we are aware that events that occur in the one part of the world affect all of us. So what we are going to do? We're going to sit like these monkeys and just watch and don't listen, don't talk, and don't see things? I don't think so. I think we have to think for ourselves, or relearn to think, reflect on things, get our minds away from volume of daily information and manage to abstract ourselves a little so that we can direct our brain better. This is one thing. We must seek within ourselves more empathy, inclusion, observation, active listening, being free internally to be creative and be able to help those who cannot get rid of the daily avalanche of information and difficulties in decision making. But why I'm here talking about artificial intelligence or population problems and social problems is if I should be here talking about contracts. And because we are experiencing a moment of ongoing revolution, we have to be flexible and open and rethink the way we relate, including in our legal relationships. And because there is no contract without a social and economic matrix that gives it meaning and defines its rules, the society is the primary source of the contract. What to do if society is in movement, if the institutions and traditional rules are fragmented, if there are new values? So what we are going to do? So think about, but let's talk about contracts, because I'm here to talk about contracts. So contracts, as you know, have been treated in their binary aspect, the obligations of exchange and the economic advantages. The contract always prioritized the transactional aspect and obeyed a power game that was related to the hierarchical system of the third industrial revolution or the second. At that time, society was based on a rigid system of hierarchy. It was an industrial society that was based on vertically constituted institutions, a controllable, predictable, slow, stable system. And based on this reality, the contract has always been negotiated based on distributive negotiation, that is a win-lose system. And we have been carrying this same model until today, even though we are living in another historical, socially, and economically different context. So when we sign a contract, we start a relationship with a feeling of loss. We face a competitive language with obscure clauses and an emphasis on dissent and penalties. The conventional contract removes power from the parties. Once the document is created, the parties no longer hold power over how the language and the interpretation of the contract will impact them. So, but let's change the perspective a bit. Let's go back to the 60s and revisit this man, Ian McNeill. Ian McNeill, among others, created the relational contract theory in the 60s. And he taught that contract must be seen from a sociological point of view, focusing on exchange. And exchange is a recurring part of a human behavior. For example, we are exchanging now. So for him, contracts, it's simple. Contracts are about doing things in the real world, building things, selling things, cooperating in ventures, achieving power and prestige, sharing and competing in a family structure. For him, the contract is an instrument of social cooperation. And he used to say that if we wish to understand contract, we must return from our self-imposed intellectual isolation and observe some basic truths. He said that there's no contract without common needs and tastes created only by society. And it's inconceivable contract without society. There's no contract with isolation. There's no contract with language, and it is impossible. And is irrationally unthinkable that a contract without a society. The fundamental root, the base of contract is society. That's why I started my presentation today talking about our context. Never has contract occurred without society, never will occur without society, and never can its functioning be understood isolated from the society. So as an instrument of social cooperation, the contract has four primary roots: society, specialization of work and exchange, because we don't know everything, we have to exchange. The choice, a minimum sense of freedom to choose, and a future consciousness. This man started to say that in the 60s, okay? And then he divided the contracts in two kinds of contracts: discrete and relational. Discrete are the contracts that involve a small part of our personality, are limited in scope, are not personally unique, can be transferred easily. Communications are limited and formal. Satisfaction limit to economic exchange. For example, when I go to a gas station to buy gas, when I go to a supermarket to buy groceries. And there is the other kind of contract, which is relational contract. And he divided in two kinds of contracts: primitive relational contract and modern relation contract. The primitive, the trading behavior intertwined with a primitive community. It's in the first, in the second, in the third industrial revolution, with little specialization, little change. But then he mentioned the modern relational contract. In this case, exchange in a larger, complex, highly specialized society subject to change, to a constant change. So some characteristics of the relational contract, I think it's important for you to understand. Those contracts, they produce interpersonal relationships. They are long-term. They require cooperative behavior for the future. The quantities of exchange are difficult to measure because of the duration of the contract, generates interdependence, and generates some division of risks and results, and has those personal elements such as friendship, camaraderie, kindship, morality, community values. He said the social rules and moral rules are integral part of the relational contract. Do you have some ideas seeing those characteristics? Who would like to give me some examples of a contract with those characteristics? I would love to listen to you if you want to share with me.
May I please ask a question before an example?
Of course.
As I understand this theory, it's largely based in the transactional setting. And I was wondering if it's applicable also to contracts that settle disputes rather than prevent disputes.
Okay. You can transform your relationship. For example, if you have a dispute in the middle of a contract, you are able to rebuild your relationship. I used to say that based on this theory, when you see in the first place the relation, you are able to see the contract as a symbol of the relation. And if it is a relation, naturally we are going to have movements. And then you are able to rebuild your relation and, of course, rebuild your contract, because the main principle in this perspective is flexibility. And I don't know if I answered properly your question.
Yes, I hope I understood your meaning. That the transformation of the relationship is part of settling a dispute,
yes,
not
exactly.
only preventing it.
Yeah, in this case, you see in the sequence that why we are facing in this perspective, because I'm going to add the economical thoughts, some things about economics, and then I think I will answer better your question. I hope so. But some examples of contracts, of relational contracts, for you to put in a different perspective. Marriage contract, it is a relational contract. Employment contract, it is super relational. Partnership contract, it is relational contract. Joint venture between two companies to build a bridge or to build a building or something. Franchise, distribution contract, representation contract. Some examples of relational contract, again, because there is interpersonal relationships, long terms, generates interdependence, some divisions of risks and results. Cooperative behavior for the future is expected. We have this difficult to measure the quantities because of the time. And we have those elements like friendship, camaraderie, kindship, morality. For example, family business, it is essential relational. There's a lot of social and moral rules involved in a business, in a family business, for example. And okay, let's talk about economics, another theory, behavioral contract theory. So behavioral contract theory is a branch of economic theory that refers to a multitude of ideas and theories shared by several economists. The common denominator is contract theory. It focuses on the contract as a way to mitigate conflict between the contracting parties' interests. And I think I'm going to reach Yale question in a minute or two. So, one thing before I start to talk about the economists, the relational theory of the contracts was built in the 60s and was based on a social and economic matrix that was still linked to the third industrial revolution. Therefore, it was somewhat forgotten in the academic environment until with the fourth industrial revolution, some scholars began to see it was a possibility in view of the new speed imposed by the network and digital solutions. So, and with the pandemic accelerated a lot of things, including the deeper examination of contracts from a different perspective, which ends up integrating, as you will see in a second, the world of law with psychology and economics, among other sciences. Finally, so we start with those men, Oliver Hart and Ben Armstrong, Nobel Prize in Economics, 2016. They say that all contracts are incomplete and may be silent on many points and don't reflect the position of all parties involved. Contracts must be a reference point, emphasizing the need for mechanisms to continually align expectations or update reference points as unanticipated events occur and require change. This is the point I would like to refer for your question. The contract is therefore not only an instrument of risk mitigation, but also an expectation management instrument. And then we have Oliver Wilson, who passed away in the middle of COVID 2020, Nobel Prize in Economics in 2009 for economics of transaction costs. He said that transaction costs include monetary costs, but not only include experience, flexibility, risk, asset specificity, relationship management cost, and partner setup and switching costs, to name just a few that should be considered. Some tips from Professor Oliver: develop contracts that create mutual advantage. Use the contract as a framework and not a weapon. The greater the dependency, the greater the need to preserve continuity. Building loyalty reduces transaction costs. Seeking new employees, for example, can be more expensive than investing and qualifying existing employees. Build trust and credibility. And then we have also Daniel Kahneman, who is not an economist, but won a Nobel Prize in Economics in 2002. He is a psychologist and research, and he is from your country, Yale. And it is considered the father of behavioral economics, with the perspective theory that brought us the two systems of thoughts, the fast and the slow. Instead of calculating possible outcomes, for example, we use mental shortcuts known as heuristics, and which are susceptible to bias. The pain of loss, for example, is systematically superior to the joy of gain in subjective terms. And Kahneman pointed as well some fallacies. And he had a partner who passed away from Israel, Tversky. And they mentioned, for example, the planning fallacy. We think we humans know how to plan. And a contract, it is a plan for the future. We think we like to see us as a good planners, but we are not a good planners because we have this tendency for simplicity. We see the world as more tidy, simple, predictable, and coherent than that the world is really. So a core problem is that we have this illusion that understanding the past leads us to the ability to predict the future, and it's not right. So we create, of course, high expectations, and this naturally leads to great frustrations that reflects in our relationships and therefore in our contracts, okay? And we have this scholar, Kate Wittesek, in the University of Tennessee, is part of a group of scholars who suggested formalizing the psychological relational contract, giving the formal relational contract the following definition. And she's not a lawyer, she's a business teacher, but she created this definition. What is a relational formal contract? Is a legally enforceable written contract establishing a commercial partnership with a flexible contract framework based on social norms and jointly defined objectives, prioritizing a relationship with the continuous alignment of interests before the commercial transactions. So, psychology and behavior economics focus on what motivates people to act in different ways. Simply put, it's easier to write good contracts when you understand what motivates people and how common biases can slip into decisions making. When you build the relationship well in the first place, it becomes easier to negotiate the transactional part of the contract. It's okay so far for you? Thank you. So, what is this psychological contract? It is the individual belief system of the parties in relation to their mutual obligation. This obligation grows out of the promises made at the beginning of the relationships, from the approximation process through the consolidation of the contract and the day-to-day interaction between the parties. So, what we are going to do with the psychological contract? Well, this is the psychological contract, and we are talking about contracts. So we have in a relational contract, we have expectation, promises, interest, we have presumed obligations like loyalty, trust. This is the mental models that guide the behavior during a relational contract, okay? So scholars lately used to defend the idea that we have to put on the written contract, we have to add in the written contract the psychological rationality. We don't have to have only the binary system of the past, which were obligational rationality and economic rationality. We have to put, to write the psychological rationality, the way we are going to behave ourselves during the relationship. Okay, so in this environment, we need an integrative negotiation, a win-win negotiation, not more the distributive negotiation, win-lose. So that's why we have to change our perspective. And how to integrate psychological rationality into the contract if we are dealing with so many aspects: law, interest, neuroscience, psychology, behavioral economics, mindfulness, a lot of abstractions. We are going to see in the second part through methodologies. We need methodologies in order to get this abstraction and transform into a formal contract. So I'm going to talk this. I have here two methodologies, conscious contract and vested, which is a methodology created by Kate Vitasek in the University of Tennessee. And it's more direct to relational contracts of outsourcing. It's the specialization in how to apply vested. But I'm going to talk about conscious contract. But before talking about conscious contract and bringing some practical examples, I will propose a short 5-minute break for you to breathe, drink water, coffee, or stretch yourself a bit. And after all, we already share, because I already share a lot of information. And then I'm going to break 5 minutes and we go back to see how I am applying conscious contract. Okay? It's okay for you? Thank you. Are you listening to me now? Okay, thank you. So I'm going to talk a bit about conscious contract, a methodology that was conceived by J. Kim Wright and Linda Alvarez. Kim and Linda were pioneers in bringing a new perspective to contracts, even without the economic base that I mentioned before. Conscious contract, the methodology proposed by them, was ahead of its time in proposing a more solid and humanized relational base, taking care of attentively to the interests and expectations of the parties involved, as well as proposing the creation of conflict prevention and resolution base. It is an open methodology based on key concepts that form its fundamental base: human dignity, gender equality, empowerment, leverage, interconnection, sustainability, social transformation, holistic approach, decentralization. And because it is a methodology that works with values, respecting the characteristics of each of the parties, or all the parties involved, lawyers must take into account the existence of variation, which of course belongs to the characteristics of each participant, company, or legal business. And for the practitioners, Kim and Linda created like a process. Conscious contract is a process. Which start with a mindset shift from adversarial to collaborative, from focus on legal issues to focus on relationships. And then we have the touchstone, which is the base of the relational, of the relationship. And then we have how I work, how I will contribute to the relationships, how I will communicate myself during the contract. And then we have the ACD, which is the base of prevention and resolution system of conflicts. But it is. I don't want to talk about the whole process, but I just wanted you to have an overview of the process. Okay, so where to apply? I used to say that conscious contract, it is the feeling of the relational cake. We are able to apply in all legal relationships that have this relational characteristics. And conscious contracts helps to build the psychological contract that will be written like I mentioned before. Okay, so like I said, there's two conceptual bases, namely the touchstone and the ACAD. The touchstone is the fundamental basis of the relationship. I'm just changing here the place, and the construction of the structure common to all the parties, and which will serve as the main structural source of relationship. ACAD can be said to be the conflict prevention and resolution system created by the parties themselves, and which will integrate the contract. In my practice, I do some movements. My first step, I work with values and identification of characteristics of the parties' interests and needs. And in the second step, I build with the parties the touchstone. I'm going to share with you some examples. The thing is that I have to warn you that this is a translation of a contract written in Portuguese, based on the civil law system, which is different from the common law system, okay? But anyway, I'm gonna, before that, the first step is a delicate work of evaluation, mutual knowledge and acceptance. And I carry out individual and joint interviews, even giving the parties the possibility of having as many meetings as they consider necessary to understand the interests and needs of each other. I identify the values of the parties, I analyze their compatibilities, and work with great emphasis on divergent values. The divergent values could be complementary or could generate a lot of conflict. So this is very important in my opinion. And only after this identification do I move towards to the joint construction of the touchstone. Let's see one example. This is one example that I built. Considering finally that the contracting, Jose and Ana decided to review some aspects of their relationship, especially with regard to decision-making, risk and conflict prevention and resolution. They signed this partnership agreement, doing so in the following terms: declaration of purpose and fundamental principles of the contract. Jose and Ana consciously declared that this contract was built from a process of mutual knowledge and recognition, both personal and professional. They also declared that they are aware of the legal nature of the relationship they are now entering into. They admit to maintaining a relationship that unfolds in two environmentals, namely a formal corporate environment and another, in fact, practiced between them informally. They also declare jointly and with knowledge expressly that their purpose in the construction of this contract are stretching their personal and corporate ties, remain acting professionally and jointly in the intellectual property market, maintain high quality criteria in the services provided, promoting full customer satisfaction, expand the participation of the company of which they are partners in the own market, maintain a relationship of the same nature, not admitting the existence of any degree of hierarchy, subordination, or preference between them, maintain a flexible corporate relationship, whether in terms of location, of operation, or opening hours. This is the first declaration of the purpose they decided. Pay attention that I put the names of the parties. Because it is a customized situation. They are not the parties only. They are, in this case, I changed the names, the word Jose and Ana. Okay. Another example, clause 2, Jose and Ana, to achieve the stated purpose, Jose and Ana agreed that this contract is signed based on fundamental principles of integrity, commitment, respect, trust, and limits, which for the purpose of this contract will be understood as follows. Then we decided together what integrity is for me and what integrity is for you, Aubrey or Anthony, because it's so subjective. So we need to have a common meaning, a definition, a common definition that will base the contract. In this case, they decided to put on the contract those values: integrity, commitment, respect, trust, boundaries. And they define it together what those values and these fundamental principles were for them both. Okay. In this case, for example, Maria and Joanna decided the principles were transparency, balance, and good faith, responsibility, cooperation, wisdom, creativity, harmony, humor, and love. And they decided together to write what those values means for them together, not for Maria and Joanna, for them together. For example, they decided to have humor, and they said humor, lightness, and flexibility to deal with day-to-day tensions without affecting the effective structure of service delivery. Love, they decided to put love because it was a clinical, the business in this case, it was a service, psycho and clinical therapy for autism. So love, they need love because they decided love for them. It was a universal and greater feeling that should be the basis for delivering services, providing welcome and well-being to patients and their families, as well as to direct and indirect collaborators. They decided together when we build the contract to do that, okay? Let's see the other one. The third step is the construction of the operation itself. I mean, the how I'm gonna do this, how I'm gonna, the previous work with the values help the parties to find common values, and that will form the basis of principles that should be the guidelines of the relationships, including the definition of each value also according, like I mentioned before. And this third step, and they start to identify how they will collaborate, how to develop confidence, for example, how to develop the values, how to develop loyalty, how to develop reciprocity, how to develop integrity and trust together. So how to be transparent, how to stay balanced, and the object of the relationship, of course, the traditional object of the relationship, and the duration, the time, the obligations, the deadlines, the responsibility, what means they intend to use to fulfill their obligations, if they are going to count on the help of others, and the declarations of good faith. This is the third phase. The fourth step, this is this dispute prevention and resolution system and contract interpretation, which I think it's very, very important, the contract interpretation, because it is the way we see and is the way we want the others see our contract. So I have an example here, the Peace Pact, the conflict prevention and resolution system, and the interpretation of this agreement. In this case, Fernanda and Paulo declare in good faith and in free and conscious expression of will that following the purpose and principles already expressed and which they are committed, they express this pact of peace or peace pact, stating that they have no intention of causing any type of conflict between them, and that by its nature may affect their respective professional images, their business, and their personal and patrimonial interests. So they have something very interesting in this case, because they realize to have difficult conversations. For example, it was better when they were both driving a car, relaxing. It was the way they decided to have the difficult conversations. So let's see another example. Maria and Joana declared that they intend to enter into a peace pact in the following terms: that peace is also an important value for both, and they intend to direct all efforts to preserve it, both in their direct relationship and with third parties. Declare they have no intention of provoking any type of conflict between them, and that by nature may impact their respective family groups, because they have a very, very close family friendship. They didn't want to provoke any kind of conflict that could affect the group. And they wish to preserve all possibilities of loving, respectful, cooperative, and solidary communication. This is another example, and let's see another one that I like a lot. José and Ana, they decided to have a pastel de Belém cláusula. I'm going to explain this because it is super funny. A pastel de Belém is a typical sweet from Portugal and is also very successful in Brazil. It's a dessert. And these clients had a successful, pay attention, successful business, but found it difficult to stop and talk to each other, especially difficult conversations. So during the process, I provoked them to have more moments outside the company, to talk and to decide to talk and to decide for problems. And they decided that there was a coffee shop in the neighborhood that they both liked it very much, and that served delicious coffee, accompanied by a pastel de Belém. And this was a good time for them to be able to talk in a more relaxed way and also to have difficult conversations. So this moment was valued in the contract and took the form of a clause called by them the pastel de Belém clause. So every time they have a problem that they don't want to escalate into a conflict, they call the pastel de Belém clause. What do you think of this idea, Ayel and Anthony, if you want to participate?
Beautiful. What a creative way of resolving disputes, or at least setting the ground for dispute resolution.
Thank you. Anthony, do you like to add something? It will be a pleasure for me to hear you, by the way.
I love the name of the clause. It is so creative and it is so specific. It seems to me that they managed to put their personal print into this contract. And this is amazing because it is something that is unusual.
So, and it is interesting because for me as a lawyer, it was a challenge to translate this into a contract. So, but something that gave me straight to go on is that from the moment I started putting these methodologies into practice, I implemented a feedback system to monitor the relationship or the contract. And this ended up generating more security so that I could continue with the project and also improve my work. And I have five feedback questions after the completion of each contract and also after 6 months. And I also send clients some questions after 6 months. So in one of these feedbacks, especially for this case of the Pastel de Belém clause, I asked the clients of the Pastel de Belém clause if they had ever been activated during this time, during 6 months. And then one of them, I received this answer. Yes, we use the clause repeatedly. Pastel de Belém is part of our life. And pay attention, you can think about that. It's easier for you to approach someone and propose something sweet to solve a problem. And I mean in psychological, instead of simply, oh, we have a problem to solve, or we need to talk. It's totally different. Oh, I think we need a Pastel de Belém, or we need something like the other, they call the same clause, car office, because it was in the car, they are able to have the difficult conversations. You don't even need to mention the problem, because psychologically your partner already knows that behind the good coffee with a Pastel de Belém, there is a problem to be solved. So the approach is sweet and facilitates communication and resolution, especially since it was a system created by both partners in this case. Fifth step is write the contract. Well, the writing of the contract must be equivalent to a ritual. I used to say that is a ritual, and must be very careful, always observing the characteristics of the parties and their contributions. As the process is long and implies a lot of abstraction, the written form must also be in stages. I personally do small examples to help the parties. And I used to say the importance of the transposition into written form is such that I personally do more than one revision together with the parties, both individually and together. I used to propose more than one reading. I asked that the parties read with me so that they can identify the sound and that they can reach through their own voices full understanding, or identify doubts that maybe could still remain. So I have some feedbacks. Do you think the result met your expectation? Sandro, a client, said to me, yes, perfectly. The document prepared has the soul of the parties involved. And certainly we will never be able to say that we've not read or interpreted the document correctly. Claudia gave me this answer. The collaborative contract applies the internal values of the parts and requires a deep responsibility for the content. It was an enriching experience. So I've been applying in constitution of emerging companies, startups, because a startup don't have nothing except the ideas, the intentions, okay? And then they have a relation. It's the only thing in the beginning. Partners agreement, contract of service, in the case outsourcing, labor contract, and joint ventures. So I have to finish my presentation. It's about time. I'm not here, first of all, I'm not here to reinvent contracts. I'm here sharing with you some reflections that allow us to say that we must change our perspective, seeing the world with a different look than the one we are used to. The technology of post-modernity provoke profound changes in the use of time and space, and in the way we relate to ourselves and the way we relate to the world. The changes could not fail to affect the contracts that result from exchange, like we mentioned before, one of the most recurrent human behaviors. As a product of the social, not only contracts, but law as well undergoes a profound transformation. experiencing daily deconstruction. Law can no longer deal with its own lethargic dogmas. Its solutions cannot be resolutive with efficiency, and its truths can be relative, because nowadays truth is relative. So as a result of the volatility, confusion, complexity, and ambiguity we are facing, added to the anguish, anxiety, non-linearity, and misunderstanding generated by the post-pandemic world. Law today requires professionals to seek solutions that are based on understanding other areas of knowledge, and beyond that, they must include and understand the knowledge of the citizen himself, because a citizen nowadays is absolutely capable of making decisions, but needs help to do that. So unless we please don't let the robots decide, because no technology is neutral. All technologies are historical and embody certain cultures and certain beliefs of those who produce them. Be aware and think about this. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. So have no fear for atomic energy, because none of them can stop the time.